I'm Joe Fryer. Savannah is on assignment. We begin with the race for the White House and the first presidential debate of the 2024 election now in the books. President Biden and former President Trump went head-to-head for 90 minutes in Atlanta without a studio audience in what was often a personal debate. It was the first time they shared a stage in 4 years and the first time this year that voters could hear the candidates talk about the issues at the same time. The presumptive candidates traded blows throughout the night. President Biden struggled with a raspy voice, his campaign later telling NBC News he had a cold. The president appeared to lose his train of thought at times during the debate, prompting a wave of panic now among Democrats, while Mr. Trump doubled down on his grievances and falsehoods, keeping fact checkers busy through the night. Here are some of the highlights.
This is a pivotal moment between President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump in their rematch for the nation's highest office. Each will make his case to the American people with just over 4 months until Election Day.
Now, please welcome the 46th President of the United States, Joe Biden. And please welcome the 45th President of the United States, Donald Trump.
We have the greatest economy in the history of our country. We have never done so well. Everybody was amazed by it. Other countries were copying us. He has not done a good job. He's done a poor job, and inflation's killing our country. It is absolutely killing us.
Well, look, the greatest economy in the world. He's the only one who thinks that.
He caused this inflation. I gave him a country with essentially no inflation.
There was no inflation when I became president. You know why? The economy was flat on its back. If you take a look at what Trump did in Ukraine, this guy told Trump, do whatever you want and do whatever you want. And that's exactly what Trump did to Putin, encourage him, do whatever you want. And he went in. We're at a state where in 6 weeks, you don't even know whether you're pregnant or not, but you cannot see a doctor, and have him decide on what your circumstances are, whether you need help. The idea that states are able to do this is a little like saying we're going to turn civil rights back to the states, let each state have a different rule. Look, there's so many young women who have been, including a young woman who just was murdered, and he went to the funeral. The idea that she was murdered by an immigrant coming in, and I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we can do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Let me tell you about January 6th. On January 6th, we had a great border. Nobody coming through, very few. On January 6th, we were energy independent. On January 6th, we had the lowest taxes ever. We had the lowest regulations ever. On January 6th, we were respected all over the world. All over the world, we were respected. And then he comes in, and we're now laughed at. We're like a bunch of stupid people. What they've done to some people that are so innocent, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. What you have done, how you've destroyed the lives of so many people.
How many billions of dollars do you owe in civil penalties for molesting a woman in public, for doing a whole range of things, of having sex with a porn star on the night while your wife was pregnant? I mean, what are you talking about? You have the morals of an alley cat.
I didn't have sex with a porn star, number one. Number two, that was a case that was started and moved. They moved a high-ranking official, a DOJ, into the Manhattan DA's office to start that case. That case is going to be appealed.
The question was, will you accept the results of the election, regardless of who wins? Yes or no, please.
If it's a fair and legal and good election, absolutely.
Well, let's see what your numbers are when this election is over. Let's see. You're a whiner. When you lost the first time, you continued, you appealed and appealed to courts all across the country. But you continue to provoke this lie about somehow there's all this misrepresentation.
I just won 2 club championships, not even senior, 2 regular club championships. To do that, you have to be quite smart.
I got my handicap, which when I was vice president, down to a 6. But by the way, I told you before, I'm happy to play golf if you carry your own bag.
That's the biggest lie. He's a 6 handicap.
Highs and lows there. For more on the debate, we are now joined by NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard in Atlanta. He's covering the Trump campaign. We're also joined by NBC News White House correspondent Mike Memoli. Good morning to both of you after what was a very late night and now an early morning. Vaughn, let's start with you and former President Trump's performance. I mean, he often kept referencing the southern border, even when asked about other issues. That was clearly a strategy. What's the Trump campaign's response to the debate, and what are some of the takeaways from his night on stage?
I talked to multiple senior advisors after the debate last night here in Atlanta, and to say that they are exceedingly confident in the performance of the former president would be an understatement. After the Biden campaign had left the spin room area, the Trump campaign was there, essentially making the case that they have been able to expand the map electorally. They think that they can pick up places like Minnesota and New Mexico based off of the fact that millions of Americans were going to be watching the debate performance last night. Donald Trump entered this with plenty of vulnerabilities for criminal indictments, and he was found to have previously sexually abused a woman in a civil case just earlier this year. He was found to have engaged in repeated financial fraud, and yet there was little pushback from the current president. And also, when Roe v. Wade became a topic of conversation, Donald Trump really drove that conversation of women's reproductive rights by suggesting that states now have the ability to do what they so desire. I want to let you hear Donald Trump talk a part about that.
As president, would you block abortion medication?
First of all, the Supreme Court just approved the abortion pill, and I agree with their decision to have done that, and I will not block it. We brought it back to the states, and the country is now coming together on this issue. It's been a great thing.
Thank you. President Biden?
It's been a terrible thing, what you've done. And if I'm elected, I'm going to restore Roe v. Wade.
So that means he can take the life of the baby in the 9th month.
As you said, the former president also focused a great deal on the fact that there has been a record number of illegal crossings into the United States under the Biden administration, but also the steady rise of prices around the country since Joe Biden took office. Joe.
All right, Mike, let's talk about President Biden's night. At times, he seemed to stumble over answers, had that raspy, soft voice, especially at the beginning. The reason this matters is heading into the debate, voters have expressed concern about Mr. Biden's age and his sharpness. So tell us more about his night and what his campaign is saying in response to some of the concerns.
Well, Joe, the Biden campaign has believed, listen, the president over 3.5 years in office has built a record of accomplishment that is the envy of his predecessors. They've also raised a record amount of money. They've built a massive campaign operation to try to reach voters across the country. The missing piece, and one reason why they wanted this debate earlier than we've ever seen a presidential debate before, was so that President Biden could now bring those skeptical voters who have tuned out this race so far, haven't wanted to address candidates that they don't like on either party, about some of the major issues for President Biden, the economy and his age. Now, in that very first question President Biden faced on inflation, he really only may have made those concerns about both issues even worse. Let's listen to how President Biden answered that first question.
We'd be able to wipe out his debt. We'd be able to help make sure that all those things we need to do, child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our health care system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Joe, that was the moment Democrats really were fearing this entire campaign. And when you heard from campaign advisors as the debate was going on, the first thing we heard was, well, he had a cold. Well, that may explain the voice, but maybe not the performance. Vice President Kamala Harris was out doing cable news interviews when this was over. She said, listen, yes, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. It was a slow start, but he finished strong. The campaign saying they raised a record amount of money after the debate, that the dial test, the polling that they were doing showed that voters in swing districts, swing states, didn't like what they heard from Donald Trump. But we're also hearing privately for now and perhaps publicly very soon from Democrats who really do wonder, should Joe Biden be the candidate going forward?
So, Vaughn, no matter what, this is expected to be a tight race until November. If the 2020 results are any indication, as well as the polls, we're still waiting on a VP announcement from Mr. Trump. Where does the campaign go from here with just weeks until the GOP convention, which goes first this year?
Right, there was some talk that potentially he would make that vice presidential announcement before even the debate, but it's now looking more likely sometime between now and the Republican National Convention that begins in Milwaukee about 2.5 weeks from now on July 15th. You know, for Donald Trump, you know, in the little scrutiny that he faced last night, this was a win for him because there was talk that potentially a running mate could help, you know, make the case to others around the country, independents, reticent Republicans, that Donald Trump would have somebody in office who would be potentially a more moderating force here. But coming out of that debate last night here, this is so very much even more so on Donald Trump's timeline as we're 4 months out from the general election.
We know those three frontrunners for the VP candidacy were there in Atlanta last night. So, Mike, President Biden stopped at a Waffle House after the debate today. He's going to Raleigh, North Carolina, then here to New York City. What can we expect from him today? Is calming nervous Democrats the top priority right now?
Well, one of President Biden's favorite expressions is to quote his father, when you get knocked down, you just got to get back up. And that is going to be put to the test. I'm here in Raleigh, where the president arrived late overnight. Advisors say that this is going to be a campaign rally with a lot of optimism, a lot of really signaling what they were trying to do. North Carolina is a state that Donald Trump won 4 years ago that they think they can flip. We'll see Democrats across the board joining him at this rally, as well as Fat Joe. But the question is, can he begin to explain to Democrats what happened last night and signal that he's still got the fight in him going forward?
All right. Vaughn and Mike, thank you both. Appreciate you joining us this morning. Let's bring in NBC News senior Washington correspondent and News Now anchor Hallie Jackson. Hallie, good to have you with us. So let's break it all down, starting with the struggles President Biden had on stage last night. Where does the Biden campaign go from here?
Well, physically and literally to where Mike Memoli is in North Carolina right now, right, which is a state that they hope to win. The Biden campaign is putting, obviously, the president out. He's got this rally planned. That's where he'll be looking to turn the page, essentially, from last night. Let me tell you a little bit more about where they might go from here as it relates to some of the concern that we've been talking about now inside the Democratic Party from some, obviously not all, lawmakers, wondering anonymously, by the way, at this point, whether President Biden should actually remain on the ticket here. You're also seeing this in some of the more left-leaning op-ed pages, for example, this morning, with some calls now for President Biden to seriously consider that. The next question is going to be, how real is that movement? Is this just a few days of quote-unquote panic, or is this something that is more substantial here? Now, the Biden campaign will tell you it is clearly the former in their view. They, as Mike has talked about here, have some internal data suggesting that they believe independent voters responded very well to President Biden and were turned off by former President Trump, that it is obviously early days in the race. They're pointing to what they say is their biggest grassroots fundraising day of the campaign so far. And so for them, that is sort of where they're framing this, where they're looking ahead to. Now, again, it is I will tell you, it is real. And I have heard from some Democrats on this that there is concern about the president's performance here. Because remember, he walked into this debate tonight with a pretty clear mission in front of him. One of the biggest concerns that voters consistently talk about, Joe, as it relates to the president, is his age. So the mission was, in part, to alleviate those concerns. It is clear that was not accomplished tonight. The concerns about his age were not alleviated based on the president's performance, as even his own vice president articulated that it was not a strong start. Now, again, his allies, his aides, his advisors will say he got better as the night went on. The question is, how long does this debate bounce or inverted bounce potentially last for President Biden, Joe?
Hallie, let's talk about former President Trump. Once again, he used the debate to air his grievances. He at times seemed to ignore questions about climate change and child care to focus on those grievances. He also did make a lot of false statements about abortion, January 6th, the economy, and more. What stood out about his night?
Yeah, the grievances, the misleading attack, the flat-out lies, for example, about the 2020 election, the whitewashing, if you will, of what happened on January 6th, downplaying what happened on the attack on the Capitol. a lot of that, in some ways, overshadowed by President Biden's struggles. But for former President Trump, this was, if you watch his rallies, Joe, if you go to his campaign events, it was in some ways familiar from the former president. He got personal at times against President Biden, invoking, obviously, his son Hunter. And so that was the dynamic for former President Trump on stage. I will tell you, different fallout, quote unquote, if you will, a different reaction. I was in the spin room last night and probably talked to like half a dozen Trump aides, Trump surrogates, Trump advisors who had come out almost immediately wanting to tout what they saw as a decisive win here from former President Trump. Listen, you're always going to hear something like that, but I'm told by one ally of the former president that he was jubilant in the moments after the debate, thinking that he did well, that he showed what he's got and showed how he can lead the country forward. The Biden campaign is pushing back on that idea, suggesting that, in fact, the crucial set of independent voters, pointing to even a subset of Latino voters, were not into what former President Trump was putting down.
Hallie, you mentioned independent voters. We now have this new maybe subcategory of independent voters who we call the double haters, people who are familiar with both of these candidates and don't really like either of them. Do we have an idea yet how much of an impact last night's debate had or might have on those voters?
If I could tell you that, my friend, I'd be blowing through Powerball and out of here, respectfully, in just a second. But let me tell you how I think it could play out here, because there will be polling, right? The pollsters will get out in the field and they'll get a sense. Anecdotally, we know a little bit from this. Our friend and colleague and NBC News anchor Gotti Schwartz was out with a series of what we have dubbed double haters on debate night, watching them watch the debate, essentially. Big picture. The double haters, quote unquote, are going to be important, and here's why. If they sit out, if they don't show up, if they don't go to the polls, that could obviously be damaging in an election that is going to be decided by a very, very thin, very small number of people, a razor-thin margin in just a handful of critical states. These half-dozen states that we keep talking about, including right here in Georgia, will be so key. So obviously it's going to matter. Here's what I would say, too, Joe, just like a little maybe perspective as we look at this night, as we look at what's ahead. It's June, my friend. It is June. Normally, we don't even see debates until further on, presidential general election debates until further on in the calendar. We still have two conventions to come up. We still have the sentencing of former President Trump. We still have what is planned to be another debate in September as well. Joe?
And the lights have gone out. So therefore, Hallie Jackson, we will let you take a moment to rest. And they're back on. The power of Hallie Jackson. Appreciate your reporting throughout the evening and into this early morning hours. Hallie, thanks so much. One of the main topics in last night's debate was the issue of abortion access, a hot button issue that was the subject of a big Supreme Court ruling yesterday. By a 6-3 majority, the justices cleared the way for doctors in Idaho to perform emergency abortions to save a pregnant woman's life, even though the state bans the procedure. It was a procedural order, which means it did not rule on the merits of the case, leaving a lower court ruling in place. Now, the court also issued another major decision yesterday. This one dismantles the bankruptcy plan for opioid maker Purdue Pharma. To walk us through it all, we're joined by NBC News Justice reporter Ryan Riley and civil rights attorney Kristen Gibbons-Fedden, who is also an NBC News contributor. Good morning to both of you. Ryan, let's start with you. So by essentially not deciding if Idaho's state abortion law violates this federal law called the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act, experts say the court essentially sidestepped the issue. They punted it until perhaps after the election. So what exactly did the court say here? What's the impact of this decision?
Basically, they said this was improperly brought in the first place, essentially a whoops. They shouldn't have taken this up to begin with. And what the dissent said, essentially laid out here, is that this caused some real impact because the court, put this pause on that caused some real impact for doctors and patients as they, in terms of what they were allowed to do, so that this wasn't harmless, right? The fact that they took this up and was in place and then decided actually let that lower ruling stand and let this play out more until it's more right for the court to decide on had a real impact. So, a little bit of chaos there with that decision to first bring it up and then decide that actually we probably shouldn't have taken this up yet. This isn't ready for us to really ultimately decide on the merits here, Joe.
So, Kristen, an important point here. There's other states that have similar laws to this, but this specific ruling from the court does not affect any other states' abortion laws. What kind of challenges do you think we could see in the future? Is this going to make it back to the court and they're eventually going to have to decide on the merits of this case?
I think absolutely. I think it's almost guaranteed, really. As you mentioned, there's multiple states with these same legal issues. And because of the way the court just dismissed it without actually ruling on the substance, like Ryan said, it's going to be chaos everywhere. There's going to be different decisions by different states because there's going to be different interpretations by different judiciaries. And as Justice Jackson pointed out, it's going to be the same legal question that's going to come back, and I think possibly very soon. But ultimately, they're going to be dealing with the federal preemption issue that Ryan kind of pointed out.
Ryan, let's talk about that other ruling that could have a widespread impact. The court blocked the Purdue Pharma opioid deal, which means that states and victims, they could lose out on billions of dollars to combat the opioid epidemic. It also means the Sackler family, which used to own Purdue, not protected from future lawsuits. What did the court find in this ruling, and what other legal challenges could the Sackler family face now?
Yeah, it's really back to the drawing board on a deal. I mean, it scraps the deal, this idea that you have to basically come up with a new solution, because the solution that they came up with, had that big settlement, but also protected the Sackler family from further losses, right? So it was sort of one of those scenarios where you get a negotiation where not everyone's happy or everyone has something they didn't like in the deal, and that's where they were able to land on. So now this sort of just resets the process and doesn't allow that deal to go forward, and they have to figure out what they're going to do to try to get the money to the victims of the Sackler families, what they did here.
So, I mean, Kristen, understandably, attorneys for the victims in the Purdue Pharma settlement are upset. They know that they might lose out on these billions of dollars of restitution. Is it possible we could get a new deal?
Oh, yeah, I think the likelihood of a new deal is high. Absolutely. Because what we're dealing with here is there's going to be strong pressure to actually probably increase the funding and increase accountability so that the Sackler family is not shielded from liability in the future. So I absolutely think so. I think there also could be potential for increased financial compensation, even though $6 billion sounds like a lot, given the intense effect and impact of the opioid epidemic and how it has affected not just individual victims, but states have sued as well, governmental entities. I definitely think the increased pressure will increase the compensation as well.
Ryan, real quickly, we expect more decisions today and now into early next week. Real quick, what's the big ones we're waiting for?
Presidential immunity, that's the big one that everyone's waiting for. There's also another January 6th case that everyone is very interested in that could affect 2 of the charges against Donald Trump, as well as prosecutions of January 6th defendants altogether. But the ultimate spectrum of January 6th defendants it could impact is only in the few dozens, given how these cases have played out. So it won't have this sprawling impact on the January 6th case, but there definitely will be cases it'll impact. And more importantly, the immunity case with Trump is the one that everyone's looking for.
All right, Ryan and Kristen, thank you both for breaking down these big decisions. We appreciate it.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.